a wall of shields, a sky turning black with arrows, and one king who refuses to kneel. 300 isn't a documentary. It's a war myth brought to life, a legend sharpened into a spear. How close is it to history? And why does it still hit like a war drum? Let's find out. Released in 2006, 300 adapts Frank Miller and Lynn Varley's graphic novel about the Battle of Thermopylae, 480 BCE, when a small Greek force faced down a vast Persian army. Zack Snyder directs it like a moving mural, heightened, stylized, and unapologetically operatic. The film is told by a Spartan soldier, Dilios, who isn't just reporting, he's recruiting. He shapes memory into motivation. That's the key to 300. It's the story Spartans might tell around a fire to turn fear into firepower. Here's the legend. Sparta is a machine built for war. Boys are tested, trained, and hardened. The phalanx is their religion. When Persian messengers demand a symbol of surrender, King Leonidas answers with defiance that makes compromise impossible. He goes to the authorities for permission to wage war and finds corruption and cowardice blocking the door. So he takes a different path, with 300 of his personal guard, men who can take a stroll without formal approval. He marches to Thermopylae, the hot gates, a narrow pass where numbers mean less than discipline. Allies gather, Thespians, Arcadians, others, but the Spartan phalanx is the blade that cuts. Shield to shield, spear tips forward, they meet the waves. Persian infantry, archers, war beasts, the elite immortals. They all break against bronze and will. Back in Sparta, Queen Gorgo fights a different battle. Politics, leverage, and the cost of hesitation, trying to rally the city to send reinforcements. At the cliffs, betrayal arrives in the shadows. A local guide reveals a hidden path that will outflank the Greeks. Leonidas won't run. He dismisses many allies, keeps his 300, and chooses to make his death a message. Dilios is sent home with that message, and a year later, he uses it to ignite a larger Greek force. The legend becomes a weapon. Why does 300 look the way it does? Because it isn't aiming for realism, it's aiming for memory. Much of the film was shot on a digital backlit, green screens replacing natural landscapes with painterly skies, dust like incense, and silhouettes that read like statues. Time itself stretches and snaps. Action swells into slow motion so you can admire form, then whiplashes to impact so you feel the weight. It's not chaos, it's choreography. Blood reads like ink on parchment. Bronze and scarlet dominate the palette to stamp the image with ancient heat. Frames are composed like panels, symmetrical, graphic, iconic. Sound follows suit. Drums that feel ritualistic, choral textures that crown battles with the gravity of ceremony, metal scraping stone to make you flinch. This is an accident. It's design. The movie is sculpted to feel like a myth you already know, so you accept exaggeration not as error, but as emphasis. Underneath the spectacle, 300 is working a set of themes. First, myth-making. The narrator isn't neutral. Dilios trims and heightens, turning warriors into archetypes and enemies into nightmares. He's not lying. He's recruiting. He's telling a version of events that transmits courage. That explains the stylization, the monstrous embellishments, the impossible feats. Our point of view lives inside a legend. Second, freedom versus empire. The movie pushes a blunt contrast. Spartan austerity and chosen hardship versus Persian domination and enforced submission. It's simple, potent, and sharpened for effect. It's not a balanced ethnography, it's a battlefield speech. The characters believe what they're selling, and that conviction makes the images hit harder. Third, bodies as ideology. The sculpted Spartan physique isn't just aesthetic. It's propaganda. The body becomes a banner, disciplined, uniform, relentless. The enemies, by contrast, are often gilded, mutated, or excessive, visual shorthand for moral corruption, as imagined by a Spartan storyteller. Agree or disagree with the politics, the film is transparent about its point of view. Fourth, power at home. Queen Gorgo's subplot reminds us that wars are won and lost in council chambers as much as on cliffs. She bargains, risks her reputation, and exposes rot in the system. Her victories and losses show the price of virtue in a world where leverage often looks like compromise. Finally, sacrifice as speech. Leonidas understands that his last stand won't win the battle. It will win the narrative. Dying on message becomes the point. In 300, courage is contagious. One act is meant to resonate across a year, across armies, across history. So what's real, and what's the movie's frame? The stand at Thermopylae happened. A Greek coalition led by King Leonidas held a narrow pass against Xerxes' forces. There were indeed around 300 Spartan hoplites at the core, but they weren't alone. Several thousand other Greeks fought with them at different stages. The geography mattered. The pass was tight, letting heavy infantry neutralize superior numbers. The phalanx, overlapping shields, spears thrusting from a wall of bronze, was devastating in such terrain. A local did reveal a flanking path. Leonidas did reduce the defending force and keep a smaller group for a final defense. Ancient sources like Herodotus already blur history and heroism. Numbers swell. Speech is sharpened. Deeds are polished until they shine. The film inherits that mythic tone and doubles down by telling the story through a Spartan propagandist. That's why elements are exaggerated. The monstrous elite guards, the impossible war beasts, the grotesque decadence of certain Persian figures. The movie is explicit. This is how a Spartan would paint the enemy when trying to rouse allies. Where does it diverge? The F-verse as diseased mystics blocking action, pure dramatic license. The cultural portrayals are highly stylized and controversial. They reflect the narrator's bias more than any historical balance. Spartan society itself was more complex, with harsh realities beneath the heroics. Helot labor, rigid hierarchy, and laws that enforced conformity. 300 selectively curates those truths to feed a legend about duty and defiance. Why does it endure? Partly because it arrived with a visual language that felt new to mainstream audiences. The digital backlit look, the painterly color, the rhythm of slow, fast action. It also delivered iconic moments and clean archetypes that turned instantly mimetic, images and lines you can recall years later. Fitness culture adopted the aesthetic. Filmmakers studied the motion grammar. And debates continue about representation, propaganda, and the politics of myth-making in popular cinema. Whether you love it, critique it, or both, 300 left a spear point in the culture because it knows exactly what story it's telling, and it tells it with conviction. So what do we take away? 300 works because it doesn't try to be a textbook. It's a campfire story you can see and hear. A story about choosing how to meet the impossible. Remember the frame. Remember the narrator. When the dust settles, you decide what the legend means to you. If you want more, deeper history on Thermopylae, a closer look at Spartan society beyond the battlefield, or a breakdown of how stylized motion changed action cinema, tell me what you want next. And if this stirred something in you, stick around. We've got more legends to test against the fire.